Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very last session on Create Good 2020 Online. We're so excited to end this with Sailor. I think we've known each other for a little while now and been around in the same circles. And I took kind of a quick peek at this presentation, and I'm so excited to see just the brilliance that it's gonna come out of this thing. So, with that being said, let Sailor take it away.
Thanks so much, Brian. Great introduction as always. You are the man. Thanks for being here today and to help me with use the power of social media for good. A last but certainly not least look during the few remaining hours of the Create Good 2020 conference at some hopefully good examples for using powerful social platforms to help your nonprofit thrive in 2020 and beyond. I will be your host, as Brian said, Sailor Jones. I use he, him pronouns, and you can find me most easily on Twitter at jsailorjones or by email if you need to reach me, sailor@democracync.org. Democracy NC is my organization. I'm the campaigns director there, and I transitioned into that role in 2019, and it encompasses our communications and digital efforts. I've been using social media for good for about 12 years, beginning in the late 2000s after a long career. I'm very old, working for public media and over the last decade on a variety of issues from LGBT equality to reproductive justice to what I do now, working on voting rights. Today, I'll be sharing where and when I believe these time-tested lessons learned still apply in your work on social media, albeit in a new and in some cases, as you know, challenging first year of a new decade. But before I do, I want to give a special thanks to Create Good. The whole team here is amazing. Kate, Brian, Dawn, everyone. Their work to help us create good during this global pandemic is truly a model for creating access to ideas and innovation amid a terrible crisis, and I applaud them. So that said, before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge, hold on one second. I want to acknowledge one thing and one thing only. We are in an unprecedented moment, friends. As you well know, in only a matter of weeks, we went from a distant threat for the coronavirus to a real one attacking our cities and towns and some of our loved ones. And so no matter who you are or what you do, first and foremost, I just want to say I'm so glad you're safe and able to be here today. I also want to support all of you and center you taking care of yourself throughout this hour we're together. So come and go as you please, of course. Create Good will make this available to you by May 1st. Feel free to ask questions in the question box. And if the mood strikes, let us know how we can support you. Like I said, I'm J Sailor Jones on Twitter, or you can send us a tweet at the Create Good 20 hashtag. And so here we go together. COVID is impacting you, and by virtue of our reaction to it, the social media platforms we use to connect with. I want to make that perfectly clear. The lockdowns and social distancing and shelter at home orders, which in North Carolina were just extended to May 8th, if you didn't hear, have changed the way that folks are using social media and other apps and other platforms, obviously. No doubt you're spending more time reading news content online. In fact, according to the experts, the number of minutes spent by readers on news sites has increased nearly 50% over the same period last year. You're probably also spending a tremendous amount of time, like today, using social apps like Zoom and Google Hangouts and GoToMeeting and participating in many local groups. So we nonprofiteers should consider how these impacts will change people's behaviors in the long term. Experts have already noted that the forced shift to working from home will likely alter the way we approach our work, even after the pandemic, and increased engagement in online groups could make them even more significant, valuable tools moving forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're not going to make it the elephant in the room. It is the elephant in the room. We see her, and we're going to talk about how COVID-19 may impact your social media work moving forward as well. I'm going to escape here just for a second. Having trouble advancing my slides, so let's do this and see if we can. So today we're going to talk about the three big platforms as it relates to COVID-19. Social media already helps billions of people worldwide stay connected, and that has never been more true than during the coronavirus crisis. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, are among the most successful. So today we'll begin by looking at those social media impacts on the nonprofits through the lens of these three majors. And obviously the three sites appeal to different demographics, a consideration we should all look at when we're determining whether we and our organization should participate to build impact. So I'm gonna take you through that really quickly. I know this is obvious for some, but others may not know. First and foremost, I wanna do a quick poll for the folks who are here. I'd love to know how many of you are using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to reach your organization's audiences or targets. And so Brian is going to shift to the poll right now. So select one or more of the following: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, a combo of two, or all three regularly. So looking at the results, Facebook is the clear leader. Well, actually, all three regularly is a clear leader, with Facebook leading the show on the three top, Twitter a close second, and Instagram third. Looking at a combo of two platforms, 26% of you, a full quarter using those, so that's great. So about half of you are using all three regularly, about half of you will get a great deal out of this presentation, and for the rest of you, bear with us as we talk about all three of these social media platforms. All right, so we had our quick poll, and now I want to move quickly into what Facebook is about. So as I mentioned, I want to take a minute to talk about Facebook individually, and we're starting with number one. There are 7.6 billion people on this great planet, and 2.5 billion of them are on the face box at least once a month, with nearly a third of the world's population connected over a single social network. It is more than worth asking, who isn't Facebook's target market at this point? And Facebook, as you well know, has broad appeal across ages. 68% of adult Americans report using the platform, so that's something else. If you'll allow me to be binary for a minute, more self-identified women are on Facebook than men. 74% of women are Facebook users compared to 62% of adult American men. The platform is all social media is more popular with younger adults. Roughly 80% of 18 to 49-year-olds in the US have an account, but the seniors, the more mature of us, the oldies but goodies, are also on there as well. 41% of 65 plus Americans are on the face box. What remains surprising, despite its popularity, high school graduates are less likely to use the platform compared to college graduates, and college graduates appear to be leading the way on all three social media channels we'll talk about today. Almost everyone who uses social media as a means of connection uses Facebook, and that's one reason for your organization to be there. And in the COVID-19 crisis, Facebook clearly sees groups as a key element in its growth moving forward, and COVID-19 will only boost this. That could make Facebook groups an even more relevant consideration for our nonprofits in the future as people become more accustomed to and more reliant on these niche online communities, these subgroups of these big groups, for an increasing range of social media needs. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about groups in a minute. Next up is Instagram. Instagram users tend to be younger. About 1 billion of them use or check into Instagram each and every month. Young people cannot seem to survive without Instagram, it appears. The social network for photo and video sharing is especially popular among 18 to 24-year-olds. Why should you be there? You can truly create an interactive community on the gram, which we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. The impact of COVID-19, if you are on Instagram, you have seen how Instagram Live has exploded in the wake of the coronavirus crisis. And another key shift amid all these lockdowns is the capacity for video interaction, and in particular, the rise of traditionally social external events being streamed online If you are a DJ or you like DJs, Instagram Live is the place to be right now to get feedback on their sets. Most DJs have a stream now, and this is just the reality with so many regular venues currently closed. So we'll talk about what you could be streaming yourself on Instagram in just a moment. And finally, my favorite, the Twitter bird. Twitter bird is favored by affluent college graduates. That has not changed much. But when you're talking about who's on Twitter, first and foremost, you have to say Donald Trump. If you want to keep up with the latest missives of 45, you need to be on Twitter. The microblogging service gives Trump direct access to 31 million Americans who are on the platform. He had more than 75 million followers as of April 2020. About 24% of adult Americans say they have a Twitter account. Men and women represent pretty equally. And like Facebook, users still skew younger among 18 to 24-year-olds, especially among 18 to 24-year-olds. Like Facebook, high school graduates are less likely than college graduates, and the more affluent city folk are normally found on Twitter in this oversimplification of the demographics there. Why should you be there? Well, Twitter is primarily meant for sharing ideas and catching up on news and trends. So if you're a comms professional who wants to be a part of that news and those trends, it's a great place to be. And with COVID-19, its impact, now more than ever, folks are being encouraged to rely on gatekeepers, influence makers, experts, and more than that, organizations that provide news and information about the public health crisis. Twitter is where many of those news organizations, experts, public health professionals already are. And so that's the impact. Maybe more people will be there after the fact. So some quick basic assumptions. I always do this with nonprofiteers. Let's pretend you don't have a big budget for social. I've worked with organizations that have tens of thousands of dollars for Facebook ads a month, and I work for organizations that don't know what a Facebook ad is. So these lessons are for the latter group and will never hurt the former to listen up. I'm going to assume you don't have a large dedicated staff for social media, or at least one that isn't balancing texting efforts and SEO and email solicitations and other digital services. So even if you are one person, you can do what I'm going to tell you about today. And I'm going to assume that you feel like you need to be social, especially now. Amid a lot of the budgetary pressures COVID-19 may create for our organization's budget and staffing, there's no denying that getting your content online in ways that are engaging and impactful has never been more important. So let's assume you don't have money, you don't have staff, but you need to be there. And let's talk about why. So let's talk about the top 10 reasons you should be there. And we're going to roll through these pretty quickly. So if you have questions, hit me up in the question box. But first and foremost, I want to talk about the top 10 is impact for good examples. These are going to be ways I've seen we can make the most impact on social media, especially on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And it includes examples, so you're not just flying out there in the wind, not knowing what I'm talking about. First and foremost, do it before you talk about it. Whether you're a nonprofit brand or not, people are wary of organizations, brands, entities, issues that use timely issues as marketing ploys. What your organization says needs to match what it does. This may seem like a no-brainer, but in short, you have to build trust with your online audiences by actually walking the walk with what you say. The most literal way to do this is by doing what you say you're doing. And so if, or in Twitter's case, when you are challenged on what you're doing, you're able to back it up with all sorts of concrete examples. So I want to give you an example right now. Here's one. In my role with Democracy in North Carolina, to move within certain communities on and offline, we often have to make the case that despite our name, we're actually a nonpartisan nonprofit living up to our mission of building a political system that works for every single person, including voters from all parties. We have 5 of those in North Carolina. But now that everyone from the mainstream media to online trolls love, LOVE, to conflate voting rights with access with left-leaning principles and democratic policies, we often have to push back against those notions that we're a left-leaning organization. How do we do it? Well, to easily do so on social, where it is highly charged and highly political, we've published our history of action on our website in bite-sized, easily tweetable timeline pieces to show what we've been doing for nearly 30 years to hold both parties to account and support voters from both sides of the political aisle, or all parties, which we can share in whole at demnc.co/history with our own short link, or part based on anyone's comments that we're responding to. So think about how your organization's feet are held to the fire, whether every day or in crisis communications, and be ready to defend what you do and what you believe in to online audiences who are wanting but not easily able to give trust, especially in this political moment. We often make a big impact by showing people we do what we say we're going to do. Next up, I want to make a more timely example. We worked hard to get in front of the COVID-19 crisis here in North Carolina and its potential impact on our upcoming high-profile, high-interest presidential election. And so we are not only providing an online hub with COVID-specific public health info, but also recommendations that folks could plug into to take action. And this would be online actions that we would provide on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, connected to short links where people could talk to the state and federal level about providing funding, for example, for the COVID crisis. When questioned about how we're protecting you and your vote, which is kind of a mantle we've held up since the beginning of March, acknowledging that voting and voting rights may be the last things on people's minds as they fight to eat and live, we're able to point to our COVID hub with ways we've shifted all of our work online to keep people safe while they're sheltering at home, and ways they can take action to make a difference while they are sheltering at home so they can still feel engaged. This includes signing on to a coalition COVID response platform that includes everything from public health access, Medicaid for all, to voting access, voting rights for all. So when we plugged into this online platform with our coalition partners, they were able to push it. We were able to push it on social media. And from there, because we had established that we had kind of this multi-platform position to hold on to, we're able to speak on social media more broadly about ways people could get involved, that we cared about people being safe during this crisis, and also more about voting and allowing the organization to plug into conversations, broader conversations around COVID in ways we couldn't have if we hadn't really been a part of a broader effort to provide relief during COVID. So sharing all of this on social helped us walk the walk as a trusted source for COVID-19 information, not just another organization using COVID to talk about their specific issue. And in the process, we were able to build trust among our coalition partners and voters who, are single issue voters sometimes, who don't care, who don't vote for voting rights. They vote for things like reproductive justice, environmental justice, and build trust from voters with different parties and backgrounds, and showing that COVID doesn't discriminate, and neither do we. The second big thing I want to talk about, in addition to walking the walk on social media, are things like, and here are some examples of how we kind of walk the walk on social, so I'm sorry I didn't advance quickly enough, is that influencers are everywhere on social media. And this is not a new trend, but it's one that's going to stay around for a while, whether it's the Kardashians or Ellen. Social media is dominated by these influencers who are getting paid oftentimes exorbitant amounts to promote brands and campaigns. So when I was communications director at Equality NC, a statewide LGBTQ LGBTQ rights organization, we were lucky enough to get a shot of Beyonce wearing our t-shirt for free. She picked one up at a local concert, and we promoted this thing everywhere. But it wasn't the same as if Beyonce had also tagged us and promoted Equality NC's work and asked folks to give their time and their trust to our organization. There was just this photo, so we worked that in as best we could. So how are you going to use influencers? Not necessarily Beyonce, unless you have her on speed dial. Who are your influencers? Who can make a difference for you on social as a validator, as a spokesperson? Maybe it's time to make your staff, even your summer interns, internal ambassadors for your messages on social, and build social culture around the people who do the work, whether they work for you or not. So I want to give you one quick example of how to create influencers on social if you're a small nonprofit. You can do it with your student interns. We do it every summer with our Democracy Summer. We call them friend turns. Each summer we give the friend turns what we consider good social media goals for sharing our messages and creating their own content. And during their 9 weeks with us, their Instagram takeovers and stories and Facebook Live interviews and Twitter town halls, all a part of their goals for their summer internship. They help drive down our average user age from 35 plus to 18 to 25. And that's not bad for a state level voting rights organization. And hopefully through their work as influencers on social media for our messages and our brand, they'll bring new and younger audiences to the fold for us. What's more, the training they get doing social media work for us for good means they'll be influencing online audiences with our trusted messages for years to come, or hopefully they will. Another example we've done to create influencers in our more seasoned, mature populations is we have our digital democracy defenders, or 3D. 3D was our concerted effort to recruit social media influencers on the state level to share our trusted messages in their own words and encourage engagement with our organization. So we actually have people sign up to be digital democracy defenders, 3D. And a great example of these 3Ders, we have two here. One is Alet Colston on the left and Tyler Walker on the right. Alet is an NC-based voting rights advocate and attorney who is well known in statewide advocate circles for her work on redistricting and broadening ballot access. And Tyler is a Democracy Summer grad who was one of our most outspoken interns in the fight for better campus early voting sites. So these folks, like other influencers, receive information, actions, and messaging from our organization first, and they can repurpose it to disseminate in their trusted activist networks. And some of those networks are seasoned political wonks, like maybe you are, and others are young and aspiring democracy fighters, like Tyler is. And they help disseminate these messages out into the world. But they also, in turn, build trust with the organization that they're working so closely with to be a behind-the-scenes mouthpiece for. And they help us recruit folks to the fold to support and follow Democracy NC on social. So that's the second lesson: build your influencers where you can. Third up, I want you to lead from the top. This may be a no-brainer as well, but building a reputation for your leaders, your organization's experts on social is key, absolutely key to earning trust, to sharing accurate information from a person, not a propagandist organizational entity, and lending conviction to your organization's purpose. People trust people first. There's no doubting. Not brands, not agencies, not even your organizations, people. So it's time to put your people out there to provide information, commentary, and all important statements of conviction. What's an example of this? Well, I follow a gentleman by the name of Michael Lee. He's an attorney with the Nonpartisan Policy Institute, the Brennan Center. But he's also an active Twitter user, as you can see, who uses his expertise, commentary, and pretty good sized following to expand the understanding and reach of the Brennan Center's work by providing unique perspectives about the world of voting rights in real time, because that's what Twitter does. So as you can see from this slide, Michael's not only just business, he's also funny, which is helpful. Can you imagine your executive director being on the Twitters, providing excellent commentary on the issues that matter to your organization, and also making commentary about wearing pants? I don't know, but Michael's a good example of someone who mixes it up and as a result has a diverse following. And he still has time to plug his organization amid that following when the time is right and the issue is on point with the work that he does. So you can see here him retweeting the Brennan Center's work right now. So this isn't just a national thing, it's a state thing. I want to give you an example of a local example of how this works. This is the new to Twitter, Allison Riggs. She's a friend of mine. She's one of North Carolina's most esteemed voting rights attorneys, and she's the interim ED at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. Hi, Allison. While Allison hasn't been tweeting long, she joined in January 2019. She is an example of an offline voice who can provide valuable context for issues and great promotion for her organization, I might add, on social. From there, she can use her great national connections. It's helpful that Allison has argued in front of the Supreme Court a couple of times to provide national validation of what may seem like local commentary about lawsuits happening in North Carolina across the South. As seen here by our good friend Michael Lee, if you have those national connections, your experts can be retweeted with national commentary to those followers on the national level. So it may seem like a no-brainer to let your experts carry some of the heavy lifting and organization validation on social, but you'd be amazed at how many EDs and other experts in leadership in our organizations haven't taken this important step to build trust and visibility for our orgs yet. So encourage your leaders to lead from the top online and remind them it'll pay dividends for them to have that presence, not only at your organization, but in the jobs they have to come. Not that they're ever leaving your organization. Number 4, strong convictions require a strong brand. So state your convictions. Do it on social media. In addition to hard data and breaking intel or news, tweets that host strong statements of conviction have always been considered some of the most shared points on Twitter and now on Instagram. ACLU has actually made a social media gold doing this, repurposing their statements of conviction from Twitter to Instagram. They've been pulling their short and pithy tweets to Facebook and Instagram for years. So what does it take to make a strong conviction land on social? A strong brand is pretty helpful. Let's talk about that. So here again is Allison Riggs quote tweeting a post sharing that her organization is suing someone or over something and providing a short, impactful commentary on why the defendants are absolutely reprehensible. It's obviously a much more powerful statement because she's the one taking them to court. So this strong statement of conviction may not mean as much coming from me, but coming from Allison, she has a strong brand to back up what she's saying. And in that sense, maybe the best spokesperson to beat back the haters and take these folks to court. So that's an example of a strong statement of conviction relying on a strong brand. There's another example, and I just wanted to pull one from Democracy NC since I know of what I'm speaking. This one's from a while back, but after the now infamous white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, many politicians, as you might have seen, including those who in the past had supported what our organization considers racist policies, were chiming in about the ills of white supremacy. In this case, it was our turn as a voting rights organization that works with marginalized communities, including Black and Brown voters, to remind these politicians that there were easy ways to put their money where their mouths are. This tweet captures the spirit not only of our statements of conviction, but also reminds of an example of what can happen when politicians don't walk the walk before sharing statements on Twitter. So long story short, please be bold on social when you've been bold in your work. We're halfway there, living on a prayer. Number 5, it's time to get serious about optimism, friends. Many nonprofits can be focused on the fight, that they spend little time or no time celebrating their victories. Positive posts that many folks in these uncertain times want and need to feel it's worth getting engaged. So at Democracy NC, we've been working really hard to create consistent content, even when there's not much to say, but we can do it. So here's a smattering of Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter posts from the past few weeks that emphasize optimism and churned out some of our top likes and shares as a result. Some of these, as you can see, are simply motivational, especially for our Facebook and IG audiences, where folks like to interact with the interweb's most popular memes. Others, like the few here from Twitter, show the real results of an action or lobbying effort or campaign that we hosted over the past few weeks. All of them seek to congratulate for making it through the day, showing that not everything is crappy right now. And they're also appreciating our users for supporting our organization in the process. So please be the hope you want to see. People are looking for that on social right now, especially right now. Next up, it's time to compare yourself, but only to your peers, please. I won't belabor this point either, but when charting your social media success, it's always best to aspire for greatness, like ACLU with their 1.7 million followers on Twitter, but compare yourself only with your peers. Aspire for greatness, but compare yourself to your peers. Don't be so hard on yourself. Here in North Carolina, groups like You Can Vote, which historically focuses on voter registration, and Common Cause NC, they're a voting rights affiliate of the national group Common Cause. They're largely focused on redistricting reform. These groups are good bellwethers of the work that my voting rights group, Democracy NC, should be doing day to day. From them, we find inspiration, we find motivation, and we get a baseline for how we should be doing and who we should be reaching every day. And so this is a good example of how to compare yourself day to day. How are you doing? Look to other organizations in your state or other organizations who are similarly situated on your issue. When we are really pushing ourselves, though, to establish a year's worth of goals or look to who we should be reaching to get national eyes and maybe even national dollars, I look to groups like Michael Lee's Brennan Center, which has a much bigger budget and staff, yes, than Democracy NC, but also checks the boxes on a lot of the social best practices we want to mirror day to day. And as for the ACLU and the big kids of the nonprofit communication space, mimicry is always the most sincere form of flattery. It never hurts to try. So here was me a couple of years back trying to bring tweets over to Instagram, just like the big kids. You can do it too. And as you can see, we got a pretty good little batch of likes out of it. Number 7, we're almost there. But it's time for TikTok strategies for a still largely Facebook world. I know you were going to get out of this space, this conference, without talking a little bit about TikTok. Don't roll your eyes. Video content is one of the most engaging forms of content and is dominating the social media landscape right now. Whether it's short form videos like those popular on TikTok or stories or long form content on YouTube, videos are the future of social media content. According to a Cisco study, by 2022, 82%, that's 82% of all online content will be video content. So if you're not ready to put your organization on TikTok, that's okay. You probably shouldn't be there anyway, but you can mirror its successes and that of similar services like Instagram stories by doing 3 quick things, okay? Try out the short-lived ephemeral content that's made Snapchat and IG stories, and now TikTok's so popular. Short videos, short content that you just want to get out there in a timely manner. Let video dominate your content strategy in the stay-at-home time for staff by using your phone to create the rough but often entertaining pieces that make TikTok so fun. You can do that from home right now. One example, I don't have video for this, is ACLU is doing a really good job of this. They have their attorneys filming themselves talking about the litigation they've been working on from their living rooms. You've also seen this at hashtag couch parties, where local organizations or state, national organizations are hosting days of action from the couch. Start by using features like Instagram stories for your social media content. It's a really easy way to get into the video game. And you can also use these same short videos on other social media posts on Facebook and Twitter too, even platforms that are traditionally dominated by images or text content. Facebook, Twitter. All right, so I want to give you an example. We've got a video we're going to play. Check out this short video with the sound on, created by our Democracy Summer Friend Terms. This was way before TikTok, when they repurposed Drake's social media smash In My Feelings challenge to encourage voting. Low production values notwithstanding, it's one of our most popular posts ever. Brian, roll that beautiful bean footage.
Voting, cause I'm driving, so you never ever leave from beside me, cause I want you, and I need you, and I'm down for you always.
It was a beautiful video of young people talking about voting rights to a Drake song, and it was one not to be missed. So, number 8, moving on, we're going to build deeper connections. I want that for you on your organization's social media channels. I want that so much. And we're in the short rows now, but we can't talk about how to make good from social without emphasizing building human connections. So I want you to start with user-generated content. I don't want you to have to make everything. Organizations are leveraging user-generated content, and that's not a new trend, but it's still going strong and will continue to go strong for years to come. So there are some examples I want to share with you. Of course, I'm not just going to leave you out here hanging. What is good user-generated content? Well, what's been good to Democracy NC is one from last year called our More Flex campaign. It started as a simple photo petition effort to get folks involved with our lobbying for more early voting flexibility. And it transformed when our supporters started making their own signs, and in most cases showing off their guns to lend, and not real guns, but their biceps, to lend a little bit of live action to the More Flex effort. And hashtag More Flex became a fun hashtag where people would tag showing the gun show to us. And while I don't have video here of all of our muscle-bound engagement, this young North Carolinian's attempt to add more flex shows you just how far the campaign reached. So this was good user-generated content. We didn't have to make it, but it was a fun campaign that was to the point of getting more early voting flexibility, which we almost did. Next up, Facebook groups are a brilliant example of social communities building strong human connections in the age of COVID-19. Many brands are utilizing these groups to bring all of their existing and prospective customers together and engage with them in meaningful ways. And so organizations can do it too. We can use them to group members for discussions on various topics, share experiences, and look for solutions to what in many cases can be local challenges. In these examples, Facebook groups are allowing for another popular trend, which is local targeting. Here, Democracy NC's Facebook page hosts 2 hyperlocal, highly specific groups, the Buncombe County Voter Reg volunteers that we have, and the Census Election Advocates in the Sandhills, working primarily in Robeson and Cumberland counties. These groups help us build deeper relationships on the world's largest social network. So let's keep building those connections. We're almost to the end now, friends. It's number 9, use social media for customer service. Now, I know social has traditionally been a place for people to connect with social networks, their literal networks, sharing photos, sharing videos, things like that. But these days, it's become a real retail platform, a product discovery platform, and now for our nonprofits, a customer service channel. So as our social media friend lists become a little bit unwieldy, we're looking to get smaller, go one-to-one, and more users are turning to private groups and messaging apps to connect. Handling your quote-unquote customers, well, in your DMs on Twitter or IG or in your messages on Facebook can not only build advocates and donors, but it builds trust and allows you to promote your services one-to-one, which really is priceless in this political moment. So I want to show you just really quickly how we're doing that. This is a screenshot of our messages. Our supporters will often share problems at the polls with us through these one-to-one contacts on Facebook and Twitter. And so here we use Facebook Messenger with our supporters to answer their questions, to take their concerns, and in turn we can promote our voter hotline, 888-RVOTE, and our voter information website, ncvoter.org, where we get over 1 million visitors a year. So this is just one more place where we can answer their concerns and questions and also promote our information resources elsewhere. Last, certainly not least, as I've said for 12 long years, there's no online effort, social or otherwise, that will be successful without offline relationships. So number 10, no online without offline. A while back, I led a pretty highly publicized Twitter town hall. It was hashtag #NCLGBTHealth. It was a really long hashtag. And it was focused on directing the attention of media and policymakers to insurance cancellations that were being experienced by same-sex families under the then new Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. Because these insurance companies had been using Twitter as a customer service tool and were therefore paying attention to the bad press on Twitter, we held this social media event on Twitter where we drew attention to these cancellations, called Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina out for these cancellations, and invited media, impacted couples, Affordable Care Act navigators, national organizations to come. And it led to an immediate reversal from Blue Cross Blue Shield of their policy. And the subsequent media coverage prompted the US Department of Health and Human Services to clarify its own policies on LGBT discrimination in this new healthcare marketplace. It was really impactful. We had an hour-long Twitter town hall. All of a sudden, Blue Cross Blue Shield contacted us, said they were sorry. I don't know if an insurance company has ever said they were sorry to you, but it was surprising to us. We got federal media coverage in other states that were experiencing the same thing. Places like Ohio and Pennsylvania were experiencing the same thing. And several national media outlets credited our organization for this change and this clarification. So following the North Carolina win, 2 influential articles were published and court cases in Ohio and Pennsylvania emerged, forcing providers in those states to follow suit. And I say all of this not because this is normal. Twitter town halls aren't known for causing federal policy shifts, but because this would not have been possible if we didn't know those same-sex couples, and if they didn't trust our organization enough to reach out and let us know this was happening. If we hadn't known the Affordable Care Act navigators who were working in North Carolina, who were helping same-sex couples and being told one thing and now experiencing another. And if we didn't know media who are willing to amplify this type of cause. So if we hadn't had those pre-existing relationships offline, we couldn't have had this impact online. So long story short, this huge victory for same-sex couples prompted by online action wouldn't have been possible if our organization hadn't had relationships with these same entities offline through campaigns, through organizing, through the grassroots. So I can't emphasize enough, if you want to be effective on social, you want to build trust online, start with this cyclical relationship with your organizers, with your advocates, with your leadership on the ground. It will pay dividends in the end to have these trusted spokespeople and interesting stories from people you know and people you work with online. And as you can see from this, it can have a huge result. So this is our final poll before we turn it over to any sort of questions and close it out on your Friday afternoon. This is the last poll. I want to know what's your favorite topic from today's meeting that you'll be using for good in 2020. There were a lot of them. So I want to see which one you're going to use.
All right, everybody, I'm going to put the information down here in the chat. So just like if you were on the session with Kivy, so go to minty.com and then it'll ask you for a code. Put that one in and you'll be in there. And so you can check one, you can check more than one, and then we'll see the results live as you enter them. And then Sailor, if you want to hit that present in the upper right corner, it'll go somewhat full screen. There we go.
Look at y'all interacting right before our very eyes. It makes a communications professional so proud. Brian, you're a genius. As you can see from here, people are really looking forward to leading from the top with staff involvement. I cannot wait for you to film on TikTok your conversation with your executive director about how they should be on the Twitters by the end of day today. So please feel free to tag me at jsailorjones on Twitter with that hot video from TikTok. It also looks like people are going to be working hard offline to bring online success to their organization. And we'll be using hope in a time of crisis. Let's celebrate those victories. We have many of them. You do great work out in the world. Please let us know it on social. Comparing yourself only to your peers, people like that. TikTok, but not. I'm sure people were looking for permission not to move their organization today to TikTok, but use some of those valuable lessons out there in the video space on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Here we go. Using statements of conviction is doing pretty well as well. I hope you all have statements of conviction to use. Strong opinions about everything on social. Want your strong opinions to be out there as well. I want you to do it before you talk about it. And trailing behind is using influencers to expand reach. I hope the Beyonce photo was not intimidating, but even your student interns can be the influencers you need to reach new audiences online. And finally, using social for customer service. It feels like it demands dedicated staff to do this, and sometimes it does. But it's a really important space to have those one-to-one conversations that will build the relationships. So not all relationship building needs to be offline. So at this point, we have reached the end of our time together, except for any last-minute questions that you may have. So Brian, I don't know if there are any questions in the box, but I'm happy to hear them if there are.
Yeah, we've had quite a few pop in, so I'm going to put those down in the chat.
Have you ever been met with resistance from your summer interns to engage on social media in support of your organization? And if so, have you found any effective tools in framing or incentivizing that help, that makes them understand why it's important? That is a great question, Julie. Absolutely. I have resistance from any intern about any task given, but especially if I ask a summer intern who is 18, 19 years old to get on Twitter or to revisit Twitter for the purposes of promoting our organizations and messaging. One key thing is interns get to see in real time the efficacy of their tweets. So I'm going to mention Twitter here because that's where most of the resistance is. And it's also a cool thing for a young person to see an organization retweet what they have tweeted. So we always give our young people a shout out. You saw Tyler earlier. When he came on with the organization, he started his Twitter handle. He started tweeting solely about voting rights issues, and we've been retweeting his best posts ever since. And so we do it that way. And finally, it's always about them. It's summer internships are not about the free work we receive. They're about building a new generation of activists and advocates. So it's very important that those folks understand that if they know how to tweet, if they know how to link in, if they know how to effectively work for their organization on the Facebooks and the Gram, this is something that can go on a resume and something that will be impressive to their first employers. So we hammer that home, we show them how it works, and it's a story day one in our internship training. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. I'm going to put another one down in the chat, and then we'll take a question from the audience.
Hi, Ellen. Ellen asks, I feel like a lot of communications directors would probably receive direction from their leadership that you shouldn't state strong claims on social in order to avoid bad press. How do you respond to that? That is something I hear all the time. A lot of attempts at caution around, especially in the Twitter space. We don't do this as much on Instagram and Facebook, but we do it a lot on Twitter. And my response to that is that this is who we are. In many cases, our statements of conviction are backed up by strong brands that are based on missions that reflect those statements. And so we cannot hide who we are on Twitter for the sake of ignoring, or receiving negative comments. And I also showed them the interactivity of the tweets and how popular these statements of conviction are in the Twitter space, and how much benefit we get from people as a result of it. Some of our tweets have been reposted in spaces like The Guardian and the New York Times. This was a trend 3 or 4 years back when a lot of major news outlets were pulling in tweets rather than putting in block quotes or source quotes. And we actually received large donations from national donors because of those statements of conviction in some of those major media outlets. So the proof was in the pudding. And a lot of our EDs have been reluctant to be on Twitter. We need to be able to show them the efficacy of walking the walk where we talk the talk. And this is the place we do it. On Twitter and in DMs and in messages, we were also able to respond to negative feedback, build those relationships, and hopefully quell a lot of the fears that are associated with those strong statements of conviction. So there's a lot of benefit to it, and it's our job to show our leaders what that is.
Great. I'm going to take another one here. This one's from Jeanette on audio. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Jeanette. And all right, and you're on.
Thank you, Sailor. It feels to me, as somebody over 60, that Twitter and Instagram are used phone-based by most people, and older people in nonprofits tend to work at our laptops or desktops. Will you just comment on my confusion about all of that?
No confusion. That is actually true. In fact, since I am turning 45 in about 5 minutes, and I have been using my laptop versus my phone to do a lot of the social media work, especially live tweeting of events, since I've started doing this. It's just easier for me. It's more useful for me, but absolutely, everyone who's younger than me that I work with uses their phone to live tweet, to take photos, to produce videos. But the reality is we have a strong 50 to 60 plus staff. And showing them what they can do with their phones, that they don't need a video camera, that they don't need to be a professional photographer, has been really useful because they are the ones who are out in our regions doing that work. And when they see their photos are ending up on newspapers' websites, on the Facebook pages of our coalition partners, even being retweeted by their younger summer interns as the latest hot take from the voting rights struggle, they get really quickly bought into using their phones for that purpose. So we are very intentional about providing training. And I'll tell you, a lot of times we do trainings for our summer interns and we force our staff to be a part of those trainings as mentors. The reality is it's training for our entire staff, even as we're showing our interns what a lot of them already know, that our phones and our social are going to be so beneficial to our work. And so we try to include our staff in those spaces regardless of age. And it's been to great effect. And once they see the proof is in the pudding, they're hooked as well. So I hope this helps. And I hope it helps to get some validation. I'm here with my laptop even now. I stay away from my phone still for live tweeting. It's just because of these big thumbs. They're just so hard to use. So thank you for that question.
Great. I have another one here I'm putting down in the chat.
Awesome.
And if anyone else wants to speak up, go ahead and use the hand raise function.
All right, Alex, how do you leverage the user-generated content? Do you share it or aggregate and repackage it? Sometimes we share and sometimes we repackage. It depends on the social media platform. There's a great app, Repost, that makes it easier to repost user-generated content on Instagram, for example. And it will show their little, the person you're reposting from, will show their feed on Instagram when you repost it. We've done that before to give people a shout out. We also tag people in posts when we use their content, because then sometimes they'll even repost when we've reposted their content because we're a bigger, more followed entity than maybe they are. So it's it's a little bit of both. When we've been using our stories, we obviously repurpose this, we put commentary to it. And so stories in many ways are kind of the quote tweet of Instagram, where you're able to take user generated content and point out the salient points of that content. So whether it's an Of By For t-shirt that people are wearing, or a photo petition that says more flex, we want people to know what that campaign is, why they should care, and why it's so cool that Joe Blow, for example, wanted to wear a t-shirt or show our sign in that moment. So for the most part, we're just kind of quote tweeting and repackaging their comments using connections to the actual campaign or action that someone else can plug into, if that makes sense. Because we always want to give people not simply a photo of what's happening, but a way they can plug into that campaign too.
All right, popping another one in there. We got a whole bunch of questions here today, so let's go on to the next one.
Well, everybody's had their coffee. That's good.
Yeah.
Demetria, do you have any advice for how to convince my communications director to allow us to have an Instagram? She's against it because she feels like we are at capacity. However, I would be the one in charge and strongly believe that it will help with connecting with people. One, you can call me anytime. And I was never reluctant to have Instagram, and the reason is Facebook. What I would say to her is that for a little while, I don't know if this was the Facebook algorithm or what, but in the pre-Facebook Live era, photos of our actions and our activities, of our staff, of our volunteers, of people who support us, received the most likes and the most shares of anything. And so it made common sense to go over to a platform that focuses mostly on photo sharing, to really engage with a younger population, because then you have the photos that are hot content and you have young people. I mean, we often say in our organizations, we want young people to do X, we want them to vote, we want them to give, we want them to work for us. But then if we don't go where they are, how can we expect them to apply, to repost, to share, and to give to our organizations. I'll also say Instagram is a highly interactive space, especially now with messaging DMs, with Facebook Live, Instagram Live, with Instagram Stories. People can interact with your content in new and exciting ways. That is the mode of the future. I think people are very overwhelmed with how big their friend lists are, with how many people they're asked to follow, and they want that one-to-one interactive engagement, and Instagram is where that's at. So it's everything from going younger to going more visual and applauding your staff and your volunteers to being able to interact. Instagram has it all, and I hope you will be there. And you know, if not, email me and I will call your communications director and make the pitch myself. This is from Shelley. What film editing, video, filmography platform do you recommend? So I have used, God, what is it? So I do a little bit of film editing on my phone, and I haven't done it in a while. I have everything here from this is Jiffy, Mevo, Periscope, Jiffy Cam, Camera Bag. I've had iMovie on. These have changed based on my needs. And so I haven't done a tremendous amount of film editing recently because Instagram Stories actually does it for you in a lot of ways. TikTok does it for you in some ways. And so these new social apps that want you to provide this short-lived ephemeral content are largely giving you the space to create that content within the social media network. And so I've gotten away from really pre-packaging my video and really making it rougher, more raw, more off the cuff. And it's been really successful. So if you have a small staff and no budget and you can't pay for your a new video app or video platform, just start trying to make video on the social media network itself. And it's been really great for us. And we haven't needed to edit things formally in a really long time. Mario, first of all, thank you to everyone as we near the end. Piggybacking off of Ellen's question, in place of using a brand or a company account for what seem to be strong opinions, could we rally around personal accounts of staff without fear of being too loud? Absolutely. These 10 steps go hand in hand. And obviously, as my Allison Riggs and Michael Lee examples show, it's really impactful to both add statements of conviction with someone who can be trusted and believed, a human being, a real human person. For a while, there was this trend on Twitter to kind of sign your name. You know, say I was tweeting from Democracy NC, and so people would know it was me. I would put, you know, hyphen SJ, so people know it came from me versus my other communications colleagues. No, it's better if I'm just tweeting and I put that I work for Democracy NC in my bio, and I talk with conviction about the things that I know from my work at the organization. And I really, really appreciate that question, because the best way to get people involved if they're afraid of their organization standing for something is to stand for something themselves on social media. So I think we're out of time, and that's the end of questions. I'm wrapping things up now by just reminding you this was the use of power of social good for good. I'm Jay Saylor Jones. Please tweet and applaud the work of Create Good 20 at #CreateGood20. They've done an amazing job. Or you can send me a tweet at Jay Saylor Jones, or email me at saylor@democracync if you want me to talk to your communications directors about getting on Instagram. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciated the time, and thanks again, Create Good, for all you do. Have a good day.
Thank you. Everyone take care.